Typically speaking, one of the things that I always teach new agents, there are three things that they have to ask when they call on a property, and that's, is the property available? Do you have any offers on it? Oh, and by the way, what's the cooperating broker commission? Because a lot of times there isn't one. I think that we're going to see a crossbreed, a little bit of the other models that other countries use, whether they're European, Canadian, or even Australian models on the real estate side, where the brokerages have more power and the agents are really more employees.
So today I want to talk about the National Association of Realtors lawsuits. I've been getting a ton of people calling and asking about how it's going to affect commercial real estate. Now, you being the CEO of Commercial Brokers International, you might have a different opinion on some of this, and maybe there will be some issues, but I'm not really seeing any. Other than there might be some transparency issues that might fall through the cracks and come into commercial real estate. But as far as what you're seeing in this lawsuit, are you seeing any changes you think are going to be taken into effect in commercial real estate?
That's actually a question I'd like to answer in two parts.
Okay.
The immediate answer is no. I don't see a whole lot of changes happening immediately, but I think there will be a ripple effect. I mean, the impetus for the NAR lawsuit had to do with the advertising throughout the MLSs, and we're not doing that already in the commercial real estate segment. Typically speaking, one of the things that I always teach new agents, there are three things that they have to ask when they call on a property, and that's, is the property available? Do you have any offers on it? Oh, and by the way, what's the cooperating broker commission? Because a lot of times there isn't one. So we've been dealing with this for many years and having to actually go forward with this. Also, what's a little bit unique, and that I know that almost every residential company is now making mandatory, is buyer representation agreements. In commercial real estate, we've always been using those, or we, to the most that we can, the extent that we can. But now, right now, especially when there is no guaranteed commission on the buyer side for when it comes to the residential, they're going to have a buyer representation agreement that is going to say, if there is no commission, then the buyer is going to pay me my commission of X amount, and it'll be negotiated anywhere from 1 to 3%, depending on what the broker, the submarket can embrace. And we're already seeing that already in commercial real estate. Many times the cooperating broker fee still has to be negotiated, and you come in there and we negotiate what the amount is. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to an agent that has taken a listing for very low commission and not offering a market rate commission, and my argument's always, you took that, I want my market rate, so go back to your client and see if they'll pay it. If not, my client's going to have to, but they're going to adjust the price.
Right. Yeah, I do think. Now, as far as transparency, do you think on commissions, do you think there's ever going to be a chance in commercial real estate? So if I'm let's say the seller is not offering a commission to the buyer side, you think it's ever going to get to where they might start regulating where the buyer, the agent for the representing the buyer has to say, put it in writing that I'm not receiving any compensation?
Well, I mean, not so much on the buy side. I think it might be affected more on the leasing side, because what's happening on the buy side is there's settlement statements.
Right.
So everything's going to be explained and shown up front where all the funds are going.
Okay.
So, that kind of disclosure of I'm not receiving a commission, it's already going to be proof at the closing.
Yeah.
And same goes with if they are receiving a commission, it'll have to be shown where it's going. I think what we're going to see a little bit more is in the sense of transparency of overall assets in general. I think that the shift is going to be probably more on the brokerage, making the brokerage more strong and the agent not as powerful. I mean, in the United States, the real estate model, the agents really drive the brokerage company a lot of times. And, those agents are some of the top producing agents. We know who they are. We've seen them, at least in the LA market. A lot of them have TV shows. So,
yeah.
And New York markets. So we've seen them. We see what they can do. But now this is changing and it's adapting. And, I think that we're going to see a crossbreed, a little bit of the other models that other countries use, whether they're European, Canadian, or even Australian models on the real estate side, where the brokerages have more power and the agents are really more employees.
Right. I was talking to a manager of a residential real estate firm, and they were giving, and here's the problem that they're having, is they have a good number of brokers on 85 and 90% splits.
Yep.
Now, just for rough numbers, let's say they go on a listing presentation, they get $1.5 million or $2 million deal. The seller's now saying, well, I'm going to give you 2%. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, if you're on an 85-90% split and you go back to your manager going, hey, can I take this listing at this split? That brokerage is now making very little. The broker is making, the agent's making most of the money. The brokerage is just making very little money. And they've got all this overhead.
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up a clear point and a very good one in that this is actually how I think that the brokerages are actually going to have more power, because they're not going to be able to accept those deals. I mean, what we have to realize is that the amount of transactions aren't going to change. It is not going to change. It's going to be the same one way or another. But if all of a sudden the commissions that are generated are substantially less, then the company, their expenses don't change. They're going to have to then, the only way that they can adjust for their income, if we're looking at lower revenues coming in due to lower commission percentages, and then on top of that same deal flow, the only thing they can do is cut the agent's commissions.
Yeah.
So the revenue share is not going to be, high-end agents, top producing agents typically can get 80-90% splits. I don't think we're going to see that in a few years. I think it's going to change and it's going to lower, and even to the point where there are already companies talking about having agents as employees, which, the argument being there's a lot more transparency when the agents are employees. They make a certain amount of money. They have multiple people that can then handle a listing. So you have a little bit more customer service in theory. But then it comes down to the brokerage side. So I think it's negotiating that and seeing where it goes. The U.S. model has always been about entrepreneurship. The agents coming in, starting their business, not more of an employment model.
Right.
Where also we also have very large company and institutions that really control a good 70-80% of the market, and which is the opposite for some of the other European models, and where it's mainly controlled by mom and pops that may have 5 or 6 agents as their employees. They may have a town center where they have their office and they all work as employees. So it's completely different in that aspect. So I don't see us changing that quickly into that model, but I do see the ripple effect having where we're going to have to adjust commission splits to agents, things like that, to be able to just the company to be able to survive.
Well, yeah, when times are great, which will last however many years, the economy's been great and been on fire, so giving those splits wasn't that bad of a deal. Now, however, and we see it in commercial real estate, there are commercial real estate companies out there giving 80, 85, 90% splits.
Absolutely.
And a few of those are in trouble now because it's going to be, they're going to have to relook at how they're offering those splits.
I think a little bit more than just a few right now. I mean, I've seen every company I know that was offering up to a 90% straight split has declared bankruptcy. That's commercial real estate related within the Los Angeles submarket. Those that are in the 80% split markets, they're having a little bit of issues, but for the most part they have a stepped up scale, so they're not as bad as, but those 90-10 models where there's a desk fee and things like that, they're all having major issues, to the point where
well, some of them didn't even have desk fees.
Well, yeah, and some of the equity that they have left is barely enough to survive on a burn rate of 2 months.
But that's when the times are good, those models work. Now,
absolutely.
when the times slow down, those models don't work. But so I think that's where we're going to see that it's really kind of this lawsuit has really kind of shown that what's it that Warren Buffett says, when the tide goes out, we'll see who's wearing swim trunks.
Yeah, who's wearing pants.
There's a few people not wearing swim trunks, and so it's been kind of an eye opener for commercial real estate.
No pun intended.
Right. Those splits are hard to do, to operate a company and give those splits away. But we were needing to do that. A lot of companies were needing to do that to bring in talent, and they got good talent. But now, so there's a little bit of a power struggle there now, that there might be a shift down the road.
I think so. And, we're already seeing some of the larger companies in the commercial real estate sector kind of gearing up their battle chest to buy agents.
Right. Yep.
And, that may happen. But, we've already seen some major players in the marketplace understanding that giving that 80-90% split to high-end agents and giving them the platform to really promote themselves is not necessarily the most beneficial for the company itself,
Right.
and the industry. So
Right.
they're seeing a little bit of change and shift in that as well. I've never been a big fan or model of the buy an agent, because I've always been, you know what, let my performance show my ability versus, pay me and then I'll show you what I can do.
Right. The now the European model you were talking about. Now those people, there's been a few companies have come here to the United States. They've tried that platform. It'd be a hard one to implement over here. I mean, paying somebody a salary to go out there and generate leads, and then plus your marketing on top of it. So you're paying the agent, you're paying for all the marketing, you're paying the staff to run the marketing. That's very cost heavy. Do you think that is a platform that can ever really take off? I know there's a company here that does it.
Engelboker.
Yeah, I wasn't going to give their name, but
Well,
okay, we'll give the name.
It's a German company that
Yeah.
came out here a few years back. Actually, they've been in the marketplace for about 10, 12 years now.
Yeah.
They have a little bit of a hybrid model, because
Okay.
they originally came in wanting to create that whole European concept of employees. Instead, what they're doing is the owners are essentially the main broker. They're kind of like having their
Okay.
team of juniors
Right.
underneath them. And think of it as paid assistants or paid runners, as we would call them in commercial real estate.
Okay.
So that's kind of been their model, where they have one main agent that is typically the owner of that company or that franchise, and then they have 3 or 4 or 5 others in a local submarket that go in there. How that's going to change, I'm not sure, because, I mean, again, as I mentioned before, the U.S. has a history of rewarding entrepreneurship, getting in business. It's the American dream, creating something from nothing. So, how that's going to be taken by some of the top producing agents who, some of the top producing agents out there are some of the smartest businessmen and people,
Well, they're true
businessmen and women that I know.
They're true entrepreneurs.
So, and they're entrepreneurs. They treat their business like a business. Just because they're a real estate agent doesn't mean that they're not business people. So, some of the smartest ones I know, it's going to be very difficult for them to come back and say, you know what, I'll take a salary, because they're in it because they're building something. They understand that what I put into it, I get back. Out.
So you're probably not going to
in
get the best
multiples.
talent. So,
So I don't think you're going to get the best talent. I think that there's going to be a little
generation.
bit of push back. I think you're going to, lead gen is going to change as well, I think, with AI coming in. So I don't even think you're going to need a whole lot of people doing lead gen in that side of it. I think there's going to be a lot of changes within the industry, which is going to put the brokerage being a little bit more so than the agent. Mm-hmm. So we have to prepare for that and prepare to make sure that this is the image, the business, the story that I want to put forward as my company.
Okay. Now, I do think you're exactly right. You said before the number of transactions aren't going to slow down residential real estate. Mm-hmm. It's just the number of agents doing them, because we're talking to managers around the country, and they're getting a lot of agents that are already starting to fall out. Now, when E&O comes and all that, they're really going to start falling out. But those agents that really treated it like a business are the ones that are going to be successful. You're not going to get as much per transaction. They're just going to do more transactions because there are going to be less agents. That's my feeling on it.
No, I think so as well. I mean, overall, the average agent in the United States makes about $62,000 a year.
Right.
Not necessarily the greatest of incomes.
So that kind of model, I just don't think you're going to get a lot of the really entrepreneurial people. They're going to be somebody that's really looking for a paycheck, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I think so, absolutely. And it's going to really rely on the broker to really oversee those employees. They're probably going to still have to be licensed depending on the municipality, because, there are rules and regulations as to what a licensed real estate licensed person can actually speak of versus one that's unlicensed. So I think they're still going to have the real estate license. They're still going to need the education, but it's going to be on the broker to really vet out and find out who is the better agents for this. I mean, you do have a lot of people, though, that are, for lack of a better term, worker bees that do extremely well when performing a task that's given to them, but are not self-motivated to start. So I think those are the type of employees that they're going to start seeing if this model does take in effect.
Yeah, I can see because with AI, if you get it's coming along very quickly, as we both know. It's doing the lead generation for you. Have somebody capturing the leads in the office and then doing the paperwork. It could work pretty well. But well, this has been interesting, George. Thank you very much for taking the time to come in today.
Thanks for having me.
And for those of you watching, please give us a like. And if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe.